Hey everyone, we are here to talk about Blade Runner 2049. The long-awaited sequel to Blade Runner is finally here. We're going to talk full spoilers though, so if you haven't seen the movie, bookmark this, come back, check it out when you have.
Come back.
Also, this is not a review.
No, it is not.
The standing review is by Scott Calera. Check that out afterwards. But let's talk about what we thought of this movie. Tom, what did you think of Blade Runner 2049?
I absolutely loved it.
Right?
I thought that it was, as somebody that's always kind of appreciated Blade Runner for the sci-fi classic that it is, I've also had a lot of trouble sort of getting into it. I've started and stopped watching it so many times, and it's starting to sort of click with me. But this one is immediately just, it sort of does everything the original Blade Runner does, but in a more accessible way and also deeper somehow. It does both. Yeah, what about you, Jim?
Yeah, I loved it. I did not go in there expecting to enjoy the movie as much as I did. Like you, the original Blade Runner, depending on which version you've seen, is a movie that I appreciate and admire more than I enjoy.
Yeah.
For me, it was never one of those top of my list kind of movies, and I've seen several versions of it, and like you, I've tried to get into it so many times. But I love what the original movie did for its time, because it was so groundbreaking, and it is a good movie. I kind of feel that way about like The Searchers, another movie everyone tells you you're supposed to love, and then you watch it, you're kind of like, yeah, I appreciate it. I really do like things about it. But this one, it affected me emotionally in a way that I was not expecting. This was not a sequel that I've been like championing at the bit for. In fact, on our previous movies podcast, Keeping It Real, we talked about it a lot because it was in development for years, and I was always like, I don't think I really need to see it, you know? I'm really glad to be wrong.
Yeah,
I'm
what a
very
pleasant
happy.
surprise, right?
Very happy with this movie. I think it's a great film. I think it's one of the year's best movies.
Yeah.
I think it deserves all the acclaim it's getting, and hopefully it will be remembered come Oscar time. I mean, a lot of people have already been speculating maybe it's this year's Mad Max Fury Road, that genre movie that has a big shot at Oscar glory. But we'll see. We'll have to see. That's a ways off. Now, we both love the movie. All the critics are raving about it. Let's dive into some of the things that we really did enjoy most about the movie. Let's start with the aesthetics of it. This is a movie directed by Denis Villeneuve and shot by and then shot by Roger Deakins, a famous, beloved cinematographer who's never won an Oscar for his work.
He is the Oscars bridesmaid, if there ever was one.
He's the Susan Lucci of cinematographers.
He is.
Even she,
Many
I think,
people say that.
Yes, I mean, that's what he leads with.
Exactly. Says that on his card.
Exactly, you know. But this is a gorgeous looking movie.
It is absolutely, one of the most fun parts about watching this movie is just watching it. Every single frame is a painting, and especially I think a lot about the stuff that takes place at the Wallace Corporation and just this German expressionist dream of a building, these like very angular lighting plots, and it's very just dreamlike, a lot like Tyrell Corporation was in the original. It's the same building, so I think that makes it is the same building, right?
I forget. I don't know. I think so. It looks a lot like
the building with the most recognizable architecture in the Blade Runner world. Wait, which one is it? But yeah, every single shot is just thought out and just gorgeous. What about you? What was some of your favorite looks?
I mean, the sequence in Las Vegas is really beautiful.
Oh
because
my God.
The orange of the desert, and then you go inside, and sort of the way it captures like the vibe of a casino.
It's almost like an abandoned old west town.
Yeah, it is. It's a ghost town. And then also the last, the big fight scene on the water. That looked like an absolutely horrific thing to shoot. And they shot for weeks, from what I understand. But to be nighttime, and you can make out the just the detail in the ocean water and things like that. Things that are not easy to film and really get some clarity in.
Yeah.
But also too, just any of the shots with like the flying car and any of the stuff in the where like Sapper lived with the dead tree and all that sort of, anything.
It's
Literally
really,
everything in the movie looks beautiful.
It's all gorgeous. And every location also has a very distinct like color palette and just like kind of feel and how it's shot. So that also helps differentiate the locations because they go everywhere in this movie. Where Blade Runner was very just like sort of, it took place on like 2 blocks in Los Angeles, more or less. This is, we're in Vegas, we're in, San Diego at one point. So there's a little more traveling. We're still sort of on the West Coast of America. But, at least we go a little bit outside of LA.
Well, I mean, look, we've firmly established that this is a gorgeous movie, but, there have been plenty of very pretty movies that are very empty on the inside. This is not one of them. In fact, I mean, some people have complained that the original is all surface allure and sort of not, doesn't really resonate with you emotionally, except for like Roy Batty. But I will say, I think a lot of the credit for that has to go to, not only the story, but I think it was smart to bring in a fresh set of eyes and have Denis be the director of this. I love Ridley Scott. I love what he did. I admire the original movie, but I think if anything, his going back to the well on Alien has taught us is that sometimes maybe a little fresh blood is new
it can't
blood.
hurt. And Ridley was an executive producer on this movie and clearly had a hand in guiding it. And I think
helped promote it.
Was key in getting Hampton Fancher back for the script, I think. So it definitely his presence
Michael
is
Green,
felt.
we should also say is one of the writers.
But yeah, it's definitely nice to see him sort of taking a step back and letting somebody else play in the sandbox. Because he's definitely, there are a lot of varying opinions on Alien Covenant, but the prevailing one is that, maybe he's kind of getting away from what made the original special. And Denis Villeneuve really leans into that and does something new and special with it. But it's also reverent to the original. Like
it is.
It's great.
It's a great Valentine to the original movie, but it stands on its own and it's very. Again, like you really nailed it when you said it's accessible. To me, it's a more accessible film than the original.
But it's not dumber. That's the cool thing.
Dumb. It's a movie made for people who want to think, but who also appreciate genre stuff. Let's move on to actually the question of, do you need to see the original Blade Runner to appreciate Blade Runner 2049? Does this stand enough on its own that you don't have to be even remotely familiar with the original film?
I think that it is totally possible to go into this movie and watch it without having seen Blade Runner. They do a really good job of sort of filling in the backstory and doing a good job of reminding you who everyone is and what's happened. But it's definitely more fun if you see the original and you can kind of get the references and see the characters that show up from the original and what are they doing back here. They're not super heavy on like plot of Blade Runner. It's more just like the characters and the general world. So as long as you've seen it like once or twice, I think you're probably fine not revisiting it.
I think that there are a few moments where I think it would be a little difficult if you had no knowledge of Blade Runner whatsoever, of even its aesthetic, of its sort of the world, the idea of replicants and why they're so hated. But I think the biggest stumbling block might be where there are like Edward James almost shows up. Spoiler, we're doing a spoiler cast. But let you know, what does that mean? Why is, because people know who he is, but they get, okay, he used to be a cop with him, but literally anyone could have played that role. It's if you don't know the original movie.
Yeah, so it's treats for people that are fans of the original.
Yeah,
but you'll still enjoy it.
Later on, we'll get to revolving around one of the key characters of the first film.
Yeah.
I think knowing the first movie does give that a little bit more resonance. But again,
it's not too much to ask you guys to watch a sci-fi classic.
I think you could probably get by without seeing it, but it is definitely it's a better experience.
It's definitely a better experience.
You don't have to love the original. You just have to have seen the original.
Exactly.
Little context, people. That's all we're trying to give you. So, all right, we've answered that. Now let's move on to one of the great things about this film, I thought, was Ryan Gosling.
Yeah.
His performance is great. He has, for a long time now, been an actor really great at less is more. Like from Drive to, like, he's done this a number of times now, where he can play somebody who's pretty tightly coiled and says a lot with very little, just with his face, which is surprise. That's called acting.
Yeah.
He's really good at it.
He was really intense and just fun to watch in this movie.
Yeah.
Just you never know. And the cool thing is that there's only maybe once or twice where he really lets loose, and some of the more emotional revelations of the movie, he freaks out, and that just makes it more powerful. Yeah.
Well, let's talk about his character, Agent K. He is a Blade Runner, but we find out right from the get-go he's a replicant.
Yeah.
So Blade Runner 2049 is literally a movie you can't talk about without spoiling. Like, it was really difficult for us to even do interviews with the talent because they can't. I mean, his first scene, it's established he's a replicant, so there's no mystery around that. The mystery with his character is he Harrison Ford and Sean Young's son? Is he their offspring? What did you think of K being a replicant, and to that whole sort of misdirect with the mystery? Because we find out he's not. He's being set up that way.
Yeah, I thought it was done really, really well. I thought it was a smart move to just... One thing this movie does really well is subvert expectation. It knows what the audience is going to think, and generally speaking, goes another way.
Yeah.
So yes, in the first scene, Gosling's a replicant. Agent K is a replicant. It's not a secret for more than 1 minute of the movie, and that lets us get into the more interesting questions, which have to do with, can a replicant hunt down other replicants, and what does that mean for his loyalty? Because he's seen by pretty much everyone in the movie as this, like, there's graffiti on his door calling him a skin job, and other replicants are like, what's it like to kill your own kind? And so that
even the replicant hookers don't really want to
exactly. Only the real woman will be like, yeah, okay, a robot, sure. But yeah, I thought that it was a really smart move to make that not the topic of conversation for the movie. Because
that's been the topic about Harrison Ford,
Deckard.
and we'll get to that. But I was glad that they didn't. It was a good, smart move in the sequel's part to not just redo the same question, the same kind of conversation that the original movie has always had. Although I will say that I suspected that he was, just because of, from what we've seen of his performance in trailers, that sort of understated thing.
Also his name.
K, it shouldn't be totally surprising that he's a replicant, but, job well done. You kept it under wraps.
And it's not, and it's almost just nice to see a studio be that protective of, even though it's something that is revealed in the first couple minutes.
Yeah.
Like, it's a special movie. This is a big sequel to a classic, and so it's cool to see them be like, no, we don't want you to talk about the fact that K's a replicant. So, whoops, we're doing it now.
I mean, first of all, kudos to them for keeping so much of this under wraps. I mean, even shots that, we're so used now to trailers giving you a hint of a scene that's yet to come. At no point did they tip their hand about, like, even the big water battle, a lot of the stuff with Harrison Ford. Like, they've done a really remarkable job at keeping, even like Sean Young. I think there was just a new TV spot this week that gave away that Olmos is in it. We knew that he was probably maybe going to do something in there. He had done like a voiceover for a timeline for their website, but like there was a TV spot this week that gave away almost his cameo. But so great job on that. But were you, what did you think about the misdirect of we're being set up thinking that he is going to be their child?
Yeah.
Did you one buy that? Because I'm watching that and I'm like, wow, they're really making this pretty obvious. And so at a certain point, I was like, this can't be that he is really their kid. I was emotionally invested in it, that I did kind of want that, so that the misdirect worked emotionally.
Yeah.
But I was like, just like from a narrative point of view, I'm like, this movie is already too smart to do something that on the nose.
Yeah, and I will say that I was surprised, because I'm just dumber than you, so I guess I didn't get it.
We can end this conversation now. Thanks for watching.
Yeah, there's the clip right there. No, but I thought it was really well done. Because you want to be smarter than the movie. You want to feel like you're smarter than the movie.
Yeah.
Like, oh, I know where it's going. And the fact that they kind of take a right turn and they go, no, it's actually not Gosling. You're just kind of dumbfounded. You're sitting there like, wow. Because they've definitely been spending like an hour of this movie laying a lot of groundwork for, yes, it's Gosling. And then they kind of pull that all away from you. And then, you start adding the pieces up and you go, oh, I should have seen this.
But thematically and just emotionally, it works better because it shows how lonely, how isolated Kay is.
Yeah.
Like he's got a hologram for a girlfriend. He even has to put a hologram over his food, which I thought was a brilliant touch.
Yeah.
Something that makes him feel whole. And he has no family. His memories are implants. They're not even, even the memories that he has, they're not even, they belong to another person instead. And so to give his own life then in the end is, and they talk about this a lot in the movie, you can talk about it now if you want, it speaks to sort of the core theme of the movie and how the replicants are in many ways more human than the humans.
Yeah, and it's and the refrain of the movie is sort of, the most human thing you can do is give your life for a good cause.
Yeah.
And we see Kay do that for Deckard to be reunited with his
somebody he doesn't hardly knows.
Exactly. Yeah.
He's known him for like 6 hours.
Exactly. And to see him sacrifice his life for him, and so that he can have this reunion with his real daughter. And there's something amazing too about the fact that yes, he thinks that he's Deckard's son, and he even has memories that sort of reinforce that. But then they end up being the memories of
The
Anna,
memory maker.
Anna?
I think that was her name.
Yeah,
I forget
Anna,
her name.
Anna,
But to me, she was
Stelline.
the memory maker. She was. I figured out the minute she showed up that okay, she's the sister. Before it became clear that he wasn't really their son, their son. But I really liked her character. I liked her. Just what her function was in that world, and that she was like an artist, and I think it speaks to sort of. I wonder if that's not Denny's like favorite character, maybe in a way, because she's basically the filmmaker. She's creating what how you're going to view the world that you're in. All right, that was a little far afield, but since we're talking about her, let's get into. A debate that we're kind of having about Deckard, and one that we've been having for a long time now. Harrison Ford's character, Rick Deckard, is he a replicant or not? Does this movie answer that? Does it matter? Let's talk about that. Tom, do you think, having watched this movie, is Deckard definitely a replicant or not?
I am landing on him being a human.
Okay.
And there's a couple reasons for that. One of which being, and I'm sure the Blade Runner superfans out there will jump in to correct me with some lore that I'm forgetting, but the Nexus 6s from Blade Runner 1, and that was like the top of the line model at that point, all had a 4-year lifespan. And yes, we had Rachel was a prototype that may have had an open-ended lifespan. But I feel like that's a lot of burden put on happenstance for Deckard not to be a replicant, or for Deckard to be a replicant, rather. So there's that, and there's also just the fact that, I don't know, I think the movie means more if Deckard is a human, and for Kay to be sacrificing his life for a human, because that says a lot about Kay and his humanity. it's interesting to use K as sort of like the reason I think Deckard is a replicant, but
Why do you think he's not a replicant?
why he's not a replicant. Yeah, excuse me. So yeah, I think that the fact that K is going to give his life for a human almost makes him more human in that moment than human. You know, the Tyrell motto, more human than human. So that's I do think that Deckard's a human, but you don't agree.
I don't. I think Deckard is a replicant. Here's why. The whole idea, it wouldn't be earth-shattering, groundbreaking if a human impregnated a replicant. But if replicants could suddenly breed themselves, that would be scary to humans. Because that means you can't control them. All you have to do is make sure humans don't bone a replicant and you won't have any human replicant babies. But if replicants can fall in love and procreate, then that is a game changer. That is why humans would panic. And I think it has a lot more weight. As far as like Deckard not being a replicant because he's older, well, Dave Bautista and his character Sapper and his wife delivered the baby.
Right.
And that was at least 30 years ago.
Right.
So he's a replicant, so he's been around that long. So I feel like something, you know, if it turns out that if Deckard is human, I feel like there's maybe a little wonkiness there with the math on replicant lifespans because Sapper,
got to check that serial number.
Yeah, and you know, clearly he's lived a long time.
Sure. Yeah, and he may be. I think Nexus 8s are the ones that have the open-ended lifespan. I think that's covered in the opening titles of the movie.
But the thing is, we wouldn't know what type of replicant Deckard is. I mean, clearly he's the kind with a high sperm count. There you go.
Yeah.
That was, you know, there's a lot more about replicant procreation than I ever thought we'd talk about.
We'll have a science lesson going up in 2 days.
How do replicants make babies? But no, I think the fact that if he is human and a replicant gives his life for him, I feel like I don't think that means as much to me because humans we've seen that they don't really deserve that. It's far more, I think, telling if a replicant gives his life for another replicant, and this kind of leads into something we'll talk about in the end in terms of like sequel setup. If they're all, you know, if they're ready to rebel against humans, it's going to take, you know, one of them showing a sacrifice to kind of lead the way. And I think it just says that you can have humanity without necessarily being human, because Deckard is, you know, he wants the same things other humans would want too. Even as a replicant, he wants the love of his child. He walked away from the people he loved in order to protect them. That, in his way, was his kind of replicant heroic sacrifice. But now he's getting a little bonus. He gets to go home.
Yes.
So she's not totally. You know, they were setting it up that she was sick, and that's why she had to be like sequestered in there. Mm-hmm. There's nothing really wrong with her then. It was all just a placebo.
That's the sense that I got. Yeah.
So she's going to have some issues. She's been locked in a room like a prisoner her whole life. She's got that boy in the bubble thing going on.
She may have a bone or two to pick with the world.
Yeah. Well, that'll be an interesting thing in the sequel. So let's on the Deckard front. Let's move on and talk about the return of Rachel, who was played in the original film by Sean Young, but basically they kind of digitally recreated that character, and they had another actress kind of standing in for her. But, you know, Sean Young has a credit in the movie Union. She's, you know, they're using her likeness. So I thought it was just an amazing CG job.
You guys, and assuming that you did see the movie and you're not just watching this for the blow by blow, I'm sure you guys would probably agree with me when I say that is the best computer generated face or person I've ever seen. Just like, the suspension of disbelief was broken, not because I didn't believe that it was human. I was just having so much trouble registering that face and being like, oh my, but I know it's CG, but it looks so real. And
well, the people,
it broke me.
If you haven't seen the original Blade Runner and you go to see that, I don't think your eye's gonna, there's not an uncanny valley moment.
No,
you know, where you're like,
know.
Yeah, it wasn't even like in Rogue One where, you know, you see Leia at the end or something like, Princess Leia at the end, and he sort of, you know, pulls you out of it, or the Tarkin face. It was none of that. This was incredibly well done.
Yeah.
And it was. I think it works too on a weird level because knowing that that's not really young Sean Young in there, knowing that there is an artificiality to it, works because she's a replicant. So it's real, but it's not quite real. So it just works for this movie.
It did, yeah.
What did you think of the sort of mind game that Neander Wallace, Jared Leto's character, was playing with Deckard in that scene of like, maybe you were just programmed that way to love her. Maybe your love's not even real. Like he's really messing with him.
Yeah, Jared Leto did a really good job, and it's a point that you made that I'm going to steal to get us talking about.
Do it.
The fact that Jared Leto's character is he is a human, but definitely portrayed as somebody that has drifted far afield of that and is now, almost more machine than man. He's got this implant on his neck, and it looks like he can swap out different whatevers that let him do different things. And
he's blind.
Exactly. Yeah, he's got these weird like ocular implants. So yeah, it was really interesting seeing that sort of dance between. And I do think it lends credence to your thinking that Deckard is a replicant, because that sort of tete-a-tete is more interesting if.
Tete-a-tete, look at this guy.
I know French. I don't.
Mon Dieu.
Yeah. So I think that it would be more interesting if Wallace is this human that's more robotic against Deckard, who's robot but more human.
Yeah.
But I'll take a break from shooting my own opinion in the foot to go back to your question, which was what I thought of that sort of showdown. And it was definitely one of the more intense scenes in the movie, and ended in such an interesting, like, fun way where, Deckard just goes like, her eyes were green. And they just blow the replicant's head off. It's just like, wow.
Yeah.
And what about you?
Well, yeah, I mean, Jared Leto gives a very mannered performance in this, but it works because the character is there to be creepy and inhuman in a way. Like he's almost like non-human. He's more of a concept than he is as a person. And that's not a knock on the characterization, on how it's written. It's how this person has decided to live their life, because he has a very like corporate bottom line way of thinking. But I think his first big scene, or one of his first big scenes, is the birth of that replicant. And it's scared and alone in the world, and it's covered in goo, and he just slits her open, kills her. Yeah. She's been alive for all of like 5 minutes, and that was her lifespan, just so he could, have a speech to the character of love,
Yeah.
But yeah, I thought that he did what he needed to do. I'm glad that there wasn't more of him, and I really wonder what Harrison Ford was thinking, sitting across from him doing those scenes. Like, if he's like, my God, this guy's a real ass clown. Yeah. Just try acting. Stop screwing with your eyes. I really wanted to. I wish somebody would just ask Harrison Ford. Okay, did you want to hit him? I know you accidentally clocked Ryan Gosling.
Do you wish you'd gone a little farther and hit Leto?
Did you think maybe
Yeah.
But no, I'm picking on Jared Leto. Sorry, Leto. Let's move on to some of the other characters that are in this thing. Let's start with Sylvia Hoeks' performance as Love. She is Neander Wallace's sort of right-hand woman in this thing, and she's a replicant. And she has kind of a look of Rachel with the hair and everything, but she's a bad guy. I thought she stole this movie. She was remarkable. I've never seen this actress in anything before, and just every scene that she was in just captivated me. And she could, like Gosling, she could do so much with so little. Just a flicker of her eye said so much.
To the point where I spent not inconsiderable amount of the movie wondering, is that Deckard's daughter? Like, is that, because that would have
been a twist.
And even up to the sort of final fight between Kay and Love, it would have meant so much more if they were brother and sister and their dad's drowning in the car, and it's just That
Are
would
you
have been
saying
really
this is how
cool.
Force Awakens should have ended? Is that what you're saying?
That's exactly what I'm saying. Hello. No, but I think that her performance is so what you said. Yeah, just doing so much with the smallest just glances. The scene where she kills
Robin Wright.
Robin Wright's lieutenant character, her police lieutenant character, Joshi, was just so cold and. But also,
it's the build up to it too. It's
yes.
the tension because she gets the drink first and she knows it's coming. And,
But then same thing with Gosling, where every now and then he does just sort of he goes off his baseline and he freaks out. There are a few moments like that where she just kind of just goes into rage mode and. I
where
really
she just
like
kills that guy. What is it? She just hits him real quick in the back of the head.
Oh, yeah, and his head's like caved in. And he's like,
God, yeah. She is. Awesome. I'm watching this movie and I'm like, it used to be that this would be a step down for an actress, but I would love to see Sylvia Hoeks be like the next Bond girl. Like she is.
Villain.
Villain flat out. Just I want her in a Bond movie because she just had a formidable presence, but she's a great actress. She's beautiful, but she's, and there's
like
this like
graceful
and a fierce intelligence at the same time. And like she's really, I really hope she becomes a movie star. I think she's got some, she's really great talent.
This is the beginning of a long and successful.
I really hope, actually, I don't think it's too far afield to suggest, I hope she actually gets like a Best Supporting Actress nomination. Because she has to do so many things in this movie, from the stillness, again, like that is not easy. Because actors, you want to make sure people are responding to you. To do nothing and still connect is an amazing talent.
Yep.
And then also even look at that fight scene. She's fighting these big heels in water on the beach, like, that shit's not easy, okay? That's tough. So yeah, I thought she was just great across the board. She's not the only great actress in this movie. Ana de Armas as Joy, the hologram girlfriend of Kay, she was great too. I mean, that could have been just eye candy character. And which is funny because she is literally kind of like eye candy, the concept of what Joy is in the ads and everything,
and I kind of thought something similar at the beginning of the movie. I was like, oh God, like, is this going to be this movie's Jar Jar? She's just very old style housewife, and here's your dinner, sweetie, and very kind of. But then as the movie goes on, she shows the same depth as all these other the replicants, and she really makes you feel for her. And
she's a heartbreaking character.
She really is. And there's that scene where Kay has to decide whether or not to put her into the emanator, the thing that will let him bring her anywhere, as opposed to her being sort of trapped in the house. And it was a very obvious, like, if that one gets destroyed, then that's it for her. So we all know the writing's on the wall for her at that point. But even her death scene, where it's played very human. It's this quick, rushed, I love you, and lights out.
She doesn't even get to finish her sentence, I think.
No.
And she's killed by love.
Exactly.
Literally
love
by
and joy.
love. Yeah. But yeah, I thought that was so heartbreaking, and just, again, like, speaking to the inanimate objects are far more human and capable of true human emotion than most of the people are in this world. I mean, Robin Wright's character is a human.
Same thing,
and she's a cold, hard, mean, nasty, like, she's gonna put Kay down, basically. Like,
she's very mathematical in her sort of her approach to policing. She has this philosophy that's pretty well fleshed out, of that, like, we're on a wall, and if that wall comes down between the replicants and the humans, or humans and AI, chaos. And she does whatever it takes, because she knows that if that happens, it's game over. And you just see her being very calculating, and everything she does serves that purpose. So yeah, we do see these sort of machine-like humans and these human machines.
Even like their physical kind of styling, like she's very all put together, very hard and formal, and like her hair is greased back, and Neander Wallace, the same thing. Like his hair, they're all suited up. There's nothing really Then you look at the replicants; they're a little more scrappy and
Yeah.
rough. Except for Love, she is definitely all put together too. But in a weird way, it's like she's trying to walk that line.
on
Like
that
she's
line,
trying to
yeah.
be. In a weird way, she's trying to be human. I don't know, or that's kind of how I viewed it in a way. Like she's trying to. She's trying to. In a way, like, isn't she trying to win the approval of Neander Wallace, or like stay on his good side, because he's killing replicants in front of her? So like that could be you.
Well, I think that if you sort of look at her character as a foil to Kay, I think they're both their struggle. Both of their struggle is dealing with this sort of, I'm a replicant, but I want to be human. Like there's this sort of inability.
The Pinocchio conundrum.
Exactly,
That's
which
my
would have been a
Robert
better
Ludlum.
subtitle than 2049, just Blade Runner, the Pinocchio conundrum. But yeah, they're both dealing with these same sort of internal struggles. Like, how do I reconcile my sort of feelings of humanity with the fact that, you know, by all accounts, I don't have a soul.
And also the crying too, like that single tear.
Yeah.
You know. Let's move on from talking about love and joy. Again, fantastic performances by those actresses and really compelling characters. Let's just talk about some of the other folks who popped up in this movie. We did mention that Edward James Olmos is back in one scene as Gaff.
Yep.
And he's doing the origami thing again, which I thought was great. But did you want to see? I kind of wanted to see a little bit more of him, but I guess that was enough, right?
Yeah, I mean, really, you could get away with not having him in it at all.
Yeah.
It's just kind of a fun little cameo for people that are fans of the first movie.
And it serves the plot too.
It does.
It's very much the old film noir detective thing where
It felt very
I gotta go
Citizen
to talk to
Kane,
this guy. I gotta go talk to you know.
just kind of piecing the breadcrumbs back together.
Yeah.
His cameo was fun. It's really just a treat for fans of the original.
Yeah. You know who I was really impressed by? Dave Bautista.
Yeah.
That guy is between Drax and this and even, you know, he's a small part in Spectre. It's you know, but I gotta say, Dave Bautista is, along with Dwayne Johnson, really doing a lot to show that wrestlers can be legit screen actors. I thought he was heartbreaking in this movie. Like he was a very important character. He was one of the first people you meet in the movie, and he's a guy who's just trying to. It reminded me of a Western, this old gunslinger that's just trying to live out his days and not have anyone hunt him down for the past or from the past. And of course, he can't do that. So it's really he was really good in the few scenes that he had.
Right. Yeah. He did almost the same kind of thing with Gosling. A lot of quiet intensity in this movie.
Yeah.
Just this very vulnerable, channeling the same sort of feelings that he does when he plays Drax. This sort of vulnerability that is just under the surface of this, you know, as he's described himself in interviews as this like kind of hulking gorilla. Like just really,
but
I enjoyed him.
That this big strong exterior is masking a very kind of broken soul. Like, you know, his basically, you know, was it his wife that's buried out there too, or no?
No, that was
his
Rachel.
wife is his wife is the resistance leader who's missing the eye.
That's correct.
And she delivered the daughter, and she's the one in the photo. And brain fart there. But no, he was great. Lenny James has a sequence that he's in. I think it was okay. I don't know how I felt about the orphanage sequence. It went on a little while. I thought it was interesting. But it was this weird sort of Dickensian turn that they took.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know. I thought it was fine.
He gave a fun performance. He's very sort of rattled, and he's kind of running this sort of sweatshop more or less. But he gives this very frazzled, chaotic performance, which is, you know, for a movie that has so much quiet intensity. Let's say it again. I don't know why I lapsed into Goldblum there. Quiet intensity. Yeah.
I'm going to say quiet intensity. That's how I'm going to do it. It's my movie trailer voice.
So yeah, it was a nice little sort of reprieve of that, to have a guy that's very chaotic and excitable.
Now, Mackenzie Davis also pops up as Mariette. Now, her that big sequence, the lovemaking sequence, if you will, that could have been really exploitive, but it was incredibly moving in a way because it's again, and they're all replicants, and they're all striving for some sort of human connection. Well, there's 2 replicants and an AI program, but they're all struggling for something real, and so it could have just been, cheap and tittillating, but they didn't do that. They made it about something.
It's sensual. And
is
I mean that
definitely
in the
sensual,
literal sense of the word.
Yeah.
So much focus is given to like shots of hands and feeling and touch, and that was done in a really classy way because you're right. It could have been exploitive. That it could have been bad, but it was done well.
I was wondering how they filmed that. If they had, I mean, it's like learning a dance routine where everyone has to know their exact placements.
Yeah.
I mean, almost exact, because I did like that you could kind of see.
Yeah, and that's part of the point of the scene. I think is the fact that they're never quite 100% in sync.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was a really, really moving scene. Let's move on to. I just want to talk about one thing that is such a memorable part of the first movie that is kind of brought back here is the music. I really did love the score in this one, and there are certain melodies and stuff that are from the original score, but this is a new score. I believe Hans Zimmer and some other composers worked on this one, so that was really well done. That, along with Deacon's cinematography and bringing back the original writer and Denny's work, just again, like everything
reverent to the original without trying to recreate it exactly.
It really did capture what made the first movie cool, but brought something new to it. And I think that really is, that to me is Blade Runner 2049 in a nutshell. It's the greatest fan film ever made, where you don't even have to know what it's referencing. But if you do, I think, what do you think? Do you think Die Hard?
I think it makes the first Blade Runner a better movie.
But do you think there are so many people who love the original Blade Runner, and when I try to explain this to them about how good this one is, they actually do get defensive because they're like, that movie means so much to me. Do you think Die Hard Blade Runner fans will embrace this movie? Or will they get defensive? Like, I'm just curious. Will it?
I think they will. I really think they will.
Yeah. Or do you think it's a movie made more for people like us who appreciate the original, but we don't exactly have it on a pedestal? I mean, Scott Kalura, we should point out, is a huge Blade Runner fan. He's seen all the different incarnations of that first film, and he loves this movie too.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I think fans of the original are going to embrace it. It's one of those instances, one of those rare instances when we see so many, remakes and sequels where you kind of get to have your cake and eat it too.
Yeah.
Because it's a great, reverent follow-up to the original, but it also expands the mythology in natural ways. It modernizes it. One of the big sort of complaints people have watching Blade Runner is that it feels sort of glacially paced. We all know it's a slow burn, but that doesn't excuse, moments of the
I will say, though, back
then
then, movies were made with different pacing in mind.
Course.
This was before sort of MTV and we're able to process information, visual information, far more quickly now than people back then. I think that kind of rapid fire cutting was probably kept to like action and like horror movies.
Yeah, but
this movie definitely, it moves like a modern movie.
Exactly, and that's what I'm trying to say, is that it moves like a modern movie, but it still has the soul of Blade Runner.
Yeah.
And that's what's really cool about this movie, is that you watch it and you go like, oh, it's almost what I would imagine people think of the original Blade Runner like,
this was it,
but this is actually what you think about when you think back to the original Blade Runner.
Now, let's talk about, do we see this potentially getting a sequel? I mean, obviously it depends on financially how it will do. It's not a cheap movie, and it's a long movie. It's a 2-hour and 40-minute movie, which means you lose running time right there. You lose basically one showing when the movies are too long. I don't know how this movie will do. Will do commercially. I hope it does well. I really do. that's my biggest question is how will general audiences respond? Like, I'm curious about its cinema score. And will people go back and see it again? Will this movie be successful enough to get a sequel? One, do you think, would you want a sequel to it? And two, do you think this movie does set up a story for a sequel?
I would want a sequel to it, and I would not have imagined
2050?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
There we
just
go.
however many years go by, just tack that to the end of 2049, and there you go. Yeah, I do. It deserves a sequel, I think, and I wouldn't have guessed that going in. I would have said, oh, I bet it'll be like sort of a part 2 and kind of close out the world and give us sort of that look into the future of Blade Runner that we always were kind of interested in seeing. But after having seen it, I do think that seeing the replicants rising up and sort of taking on the system, the possibility of Wallace maybe having a contingency plan for that, and what does that look like? And just the fact that Wallace is left sort of, we don't really get any resolution to that sort of character.
He kind of basically just gets away with everything, but maybe that's kind of the point, is that crappy humans continue.
Yeah, and if they choose to end it after this one, then that's a fine place to leave it. But I would like to see another one. What about you, John?
I don't think so. I think this was a small miracle that you were able to pull off a sequel to a movie that people didn't really for a long time want a sequel to. This is a rare success.
Yeah.
Even if this movie doesn't make money, and I hope commercially it pays off for them, because it was really daring gamble, and kudos to everyone involved in it, that you made a great movie. I think it would have a very even tougher mountain to climb than this movie did, because now you've done the impossible. Can you do it again? Is it going to turn into the Terminator sequels, where it's just going to be diminishing returns and just chipping away at the legacy of the originals? So I don't think so. And I will also say, like, it took probably a lot to bring Harrison Ford back for this. He never spoke too kindly about the original movie over the years, because him and Ridley Scott didn't quite get along making it. And I thought that getting him back, and we should say, look, he's only in the movie for about that last 40 minutes.
Yeah.
And I thought it was just enough.
Yep.
And I love that Harrison Ford showed up, like he did with Force Awakens.
Yeah.
He didn't phone this one in.
Totally game.
He played a real character. He gave it his all.
Some emotional scenes too. Like
Denny,
he really
Denny gave him stuff to work with. And I love that too. Because just seeing Harrison Ford get to act is a rare thing. Like, he doesn't do many movies anymore.
He's one of the last of a kind of bygone era of these like macho man movie stars, and it's cool to see him. He's still, for lack of a better phrase, he's still got it. Yeah,
so that was great. And I think then if you do a sequel, do you have to bring him back? Is he going to be in the whole thing? Again, does that cheapen everything that they just accomplished here? So as much as I'm curious about the Replicant uprising, unless you're going to bring Denny back, I don't know if I want to see it.
That would be, I think that is a big sort of asterisk on that. I don't know if I would give it to anyone other than
Which is weird, because we started this by saying, we're really glad that they brought in a fresh set of eyes for this Blade Runner sequel.
Yeah, and now keep them there. They're still fresh.
Well, I think that pretty much, do you have anything else you want to add to this? I think we've pretty much talked over everything.
I think we've run out of things to say.
Oh, well, there we go. And I thought I was the punster around here. So that's what we thought of Blade Runner 2049. We want to hear what you think of the movie. Let us know in the comments. Be sure to check out our review of the movie and watch Harrison Ford talk to us about whether or not it even matters if Deckard is a replicant. And as always, be sure to follow and subscribe wherever you like to watch IGN.